All right, we rolling? All right, hope you guys enjoyed your Easter. Hope you guys maybe relaxed a little bit, ate a lot, and, batteries might be recharged. Kind of another big push here to get to, about a month away from not just this AP exam, but probably most of your AP exams. So hopefully we're ready to go. A lot to cover with the brain, a lot to cover with the biological bases. It's kind of the unit, biological bases for behavior. I think we all know that the brain really matters as far as not just psych goes, but AP psych. So they broke theirs into a few different videos. I'm going to kind of not just condense that into one video, one-ish, two-ish videos, but also bring in some stuff that we went over in class, some stuff that's on the Google Slides that I shared with you guys. And so it doesn't go like hand in hand exactly with the AP Psych videos, but hopefully it's it's pretty good for you guys. All right, so as far as biological bases, you're going to look at the brain and nervous system, the endocrine system, and how those impact behavior. So central nervous system, that is going to be, get my water. That's going to be the brain and the brain stem. So when you think CNS or central nervous system, that is the brain, everything the brain encompasses, and the brain stem. The brain stem and the spinal cord. All right, so and I need to get a chart out to you guys that kind of goes with the systems. They're easy to find. You can Google it. Biological bases, CNS, PNS, and stuff like that. But I'll go back and look at that Google slide, show that I share the really big review, and see if I can't add some stuff into that. Okay, so nervous system, central nervous system, brain stem, spinal cord. With that, you're going to have neurotransmitters that are going everywhere and firing very quickly. Remember, it's kind of like email or the internet, right? Compared to the postal service, which would be the endocrine system. So these neurotransmitters are delivering messages, all over the place, all up and down the spinal cord, and that impacts, stuff like reflexes and reactions, and our, directly ties into how we behave. So that's your central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, everything basically that is outside of our brain, more or less. So CNS is, things going into the brain, spinal cord. PNS is everything extending outward from the brain in the spinal cord. Okay. Okay. So going on, another system, somatic nervous system. So that is basically our entire body. Okay. And that is going to consist of motor neurons and sensory neurons. So sensory neurons, essentially everything that deals with your senses, right? The neurons that are delivering messages that are all about, your touch and taste and sight and hearing and pain and all this kind of stuff, right? So sensory neurons, nerves to the central nervous system, basically anything that ties into those five senses that we all know. Motor neurons, those control muscle movements. Motor vehicles move, right? They're going up and down the road. Your body moves, right? Your arms are going up, your legs, So motor neurons, anything, messages that need to be sent to make muscles contract, for example, for the body to move. So that goes CNS to the muscles. Sensory neurons would be, the senses to the brain. Then the brain processes, those senses. Oh yeah, that does smell good. Motor, another way you might hear that is efferent, EFFERENT. So efferent neurons. And then sensory would be afferent with an A. So AFFERENT. Efferent, something you can think about is efferent. They exit the brain, right? And so those neurons, those messages are sent away from the brain. And afferent, with an A, afferent arrives. Afferent arrives at the brain. So, if you want to use those mnemonic devices, have at it. Autonomic system, again, another one. So we don't control, those are things that we don't control. They happen naturally. Automatic would be another way to think of the autonomic system. So again, we don't really think about it. We don't process. We don't really intentionally try to breathe, right? That happens naturally. Reflexes would be another thing. They happen naturally. So we don't control them. They happen naturally. How our organs work and breathing and stuff like that. I mean, that stuff is just natural. All right, so in that system, right, we have the sympathetic and parasympathetic system. So sympathetic, that speeds up, that increases activity, that stimulates the body, right? So again, sympathetic, speed, right? Sympathetic speeds up, another mnemonic device, alliteration, however you want to think of it. So again, activity of our breathing, we increase the speed of our breathing, the pace of our breathing. Again, something else that would happen in the sympathetic system would be heart rate, right? Increasing, and blood pressure increasing, stuff like that. Parasympathetic, that calms the body, that is obviously the opposite of sympathetic. So that decreases any of the activity we talked about, right? So for like your parasympathetic, that would be used as you are falling asleep, right? As your heart rate is kind of decreasing a little bit, blood pressure obviously decreasing, activity in the brain decreasing. So parasympathetic just helps calm the body. Neurons, we can come back to that later as we get into neurotransmitters as well, but neurons, in the nervous system, they are the messengers, right? Let's see here, moving on. Did the brain scan, stuff like that. Nature versus nurture, we hit up. All right, so all human and animal behavior, right? So all human and animal behavior, to some extent, no matter where you fall in nature versus nurture, some part of that spectrum is controlled by our biology, right? And again, Phineas Gage is a very good example of that. So nervous system, again, complex, remarkable brain and spinal cord. Neuroplasticity, we'll look at that a little bit later. That's something that I thought the teacher on the AP Psych review did a really good job of. But neuroplasticity, the brain isn't set in stone, right? Our brains can evolve. Our brains can get stronger. Our brains can repair themselves from concussions. Our brain, as we learn, we create essentially more wrinkles and synapses, where, be a lifelong learner, right? And read and learn and study and again, learn new things, right? Hobbies, for example, right now in quarantine, and your brain develops, it grows, it gets stronger because you are stimulating your brain, right? Neuroplasticity is just that ability of the brain to expand, to adapt, to change over time, but also to fix itself, to repair itself. Let's see here. Yep, we did our neurons there, afferent and efferent, sensory motor. CNS, again, brain and spinal cord. PNS, another way you could look at that would be all the nerves, all the neurons that are not encased in bone. So again, the somatic and autonomic system, somatic, voluntary muscle movements, and autonomic, involuntary or natural, automatically occurring. Let's see. Okay, so the really, really fun part. So, and I'm going to try to knock this out as quickly as you can. So you guys have to go back and rewind. Good thing we have that technology. Okay, the hindbrain controls basic functions that keep us alive. You would find the medulla, you would find pons and the cerebellum in the hindbrain. So medulla, that controls blood pressure, heart rate, and your breathing. Pons, that's kind of your facial expressions, right? And connects the hindbrain with the rest of the brain. And the cerebellum is known as the little brain. And that's muscle movement and body control is very, very important. Hence the little brain. Your midbrain, okay? So simple movements, simple body functions, sensory info, and basic muscle movements. Reticular formation, that is general body coordination, body control. That is also going to include arousal and ability to focus your attention, right? So maintaining an appropriate amount of arousal, not too much, you won't pay attention, not enough, you won't pay attention. Forebrain controls thoughts, controls your ability to reason, your ability to logic, your ability to rationalize, to understand the purpose of things. Okay, and your forebrain. First up is thalamus. Thalamus, that receives signals from our environment, sensory signals. And so we are receiving the thalamus, we are receiving these signals, and the thalamus is kind of processing it, working with the rest of the brain to understand what I am seeing, what I am hearing, what I am touching. And again, sends it to the forebrain. The hypothalamus, a lot of your kind of more natural urges, hunger, thirst, appetite, sexual impulses, stuff like that. The hypothalamus also directly tied to the endocrine system. See, the amygdala, that is, I want you to know that's the control center for your emotions. And the hippocampus, that is going to be, for AP Psych, you want to know that's very vital for memory, storing memory, ability to create new memories, your ability to put something in your long-term memory. All right, cerebral cortex. That is essentially like a higher order thinking, critical thinking, that understanding complex situations, functions of different things in your environment, sensation and perception and memory. I mean, that's higher order brain function. We'll get into this a little bit later, but left and right hemispheres of the brain. Your left controls your right side movement, and your right brain controls your left side movement. Frontal lobe, again, that is what you know with Phineas Gage. His frontal lobe was damaged and irreparably damaged, and that changed his personality. Frontal executive, your executive decision making, the functions, decisions you want to make, appropriate decisions you want to make, emotions. I mean, there's a lot in the frontal lobe. Personality. In the frontal lobe, you would also find Broca's area and Wernicke with the W, Wernicke's area. So Broca's area is going to be in the left hemisphere, but Broca's area is going to be speech production. Are you capable of forming speech, coherent speech, appropriate speech? And that is Broca's area. Paul, is that his name? Paul Broca. So I think Paul Broca, right, is the guy who kind of discovered that's what this part of your brain is in charge of. So it's named after him. The other area there, Wernicke, and that is basically your ability to understand speech, right? To comprehend what someone else is saying. Motor cortex, voluntary movements, running, throwing, riding, that's found in the frontal lobe. Parietal lobe, that is mostly with your senses, receiving like touch sensations, receiving, sensations for what you're seeing, right? What you're looking at. Occipital lobe, vision, again, messages from the visual cortex are coming from the retina, right? So as you are looking at something, retina into the visual cortex, into the occipital lobe, and then temporal lobe, that is sound, right? So as, again, you are hearing something, and it's going through your auditory system, and it's going to wind up in the temporal lobe. All right, let's see. Again, try not to keep it too long here. There were a few things I wanted to get at. Okay, so let's go again. Left hemisphere controls the right side. Again, left has Broca and Wernicke's area, so with speech and understanding speech. Right hemisphere controls the left side. The right hemisphere is going to be largely responsible for recognizing faces and expressions and emotional responses. Okay, almost done. Yeah, almost done. All right, neuroplasticity. Talked about that a little bit. Brain can modify itself, can enhance itself, and can fix itself, repair damages. William James, functionalist, he believed consciousness was an ever-changing flow of ideas, right, that we were aware of. Again, Freud, psychoanalytic consciousness, he thought it was kind of three parts there. You had your conscious, you had your pre-conscious, which is kind of in between the unconscious and the conscious. And then you had your unconscious, right, which you are not aware of. With that, the ego, the superego, the id. Again, consciousness for AP Psych, a state of an awareness that you have. Right, so consciousness can be different for different people in different settings and different situations, but consciousness is everything you are aware of, right? Things that are not subliminal. Altered states of consciousness, that's where we're going to be going kind of next. So those are temporary states of awareness that differ from what we normally, think of as conscious. So things that could impact that, obviously, be a dream, a nightmare, medication you are taking, drugs you might be on, alcoholic states, stuff like that. So things that are altering your consciousness. Unconscious subliminal processing that occurs outside of our awareness. So again, that can be really deep underlying issues like Freud would tell you about, defense mechanisms and repression and stuff like that. But it could also just be, you're not aware that you're tapping your foot right now, right? Or you're not aware of the cars that are driving by, even though they're happening, even though you have the ability to process that information, you're not. So I'm going to stop there. Hopefully it's not too much there. First day back. I'm going to send that out. Pay attention to your emails and Google Classroom. I saw a lot of you guys have shared the most recent FRQ with me. And so hopefully here in the next day or two, I can read those and we can meet live, kind of have maybe a little bit more of a structured outline in what we want to knock out and what we want to accomplish. Hopefully you saw the AP updates I sent out last video, and they have more they are still sending us, and I will pass that along as I get them. All right, see you guys.